giant robots smashing into other giant robots.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Giant Robots Smashing into Other Giant Robots podcast, where we explore the design, development, and business of great products. It's me again, your host, Sami Birnbaum, and today I am joined by Emma Barnes, the founder of Consonance, who has spent over 15 years in the publishing industry, who is also a FutureBook digital leader and a FutureBook 40 member. What's really interesting, Emma, before we jump into it, and I tell you to kind of give a little bit of an intro as well. It's interesting how we met, because I was taking part in a series which was hosted by another thoughtbotter called Svenja, called the Opinionated Thoughtbotter, where we were encouraged to share opinions. And I shared an opinion that I believed, and I think I still do believe, that AI does more harm than good. And you popped up in the comments to say, oh, it's great to hear Thoughtbot talking about this stuff, which is kind of how we got chatting. And I'll put a link in the notes or description to this podcast so people can check out that opinion. But that is kind of how we got to know each other. And I'm sure that's a conversation we'll be having, because I was fascinated by your almost public stance, as people can see from your LinkedIn, that you are anti-AI. So don't switch off from this episode. Lots to look forward to. But before we get into the deep end, give us a little bit of an intro, paint a picture of who you are.
Yeah, it's so nice to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me. And it's a little bit worrying that one of the hooks for getting me on rather than anyone else is that I have a position that I consider completely normal and sensible. And yet here we are saying, but then, I mean, that's positions for you, isn't it? Anyway, hello.
Yes.
My name's Emma. I run Consonance.app, which you mentioned. Consonance.app is a bibliographic data management system for publishers, book publishers. It's like a back office system. Massive Rails app, started in 2012. Marvelous monolith, or whatever they call it. And that came out of running Snowbooks, which is an independent publisher, for which I needed a system. And I wasn't going to pay the amount of money that the other systems on the market were going to charge. And I certainly wasn't going to stare at those grey boxes all day. So I had to write my own, obviously. I also have a completely adorable side project called Make Our Book that publishes children's writing. It's another Rails app, uses LaTeX to typeset their work into beautiful poetry, and their pictures go in it as well. And because I know technology and I know publishing, it's like this perfect coming together of wonderful things to help the children. So that's me. And here I am up in gorgeous northern Scotland, where I ran to just after the pandemic. Life's good.
Oh wow! So were you down in London?
Well, Buckinghamshire.
Okay, Buckinghamshire is not too far, but you're kind of living out my dream, because I want to escape one time, because I'm down in London in the big smog. But that's great that you managed to get up there. And I can imagine how far north are you?
We're like second stage north. So people get to Edinburgh and they think, wow, Scotland, wow, here we are. And then it's another 4 hours to where I am. And then when we go on holiday, we go another 4 hours up. It's
unbelievable.
Yes.
Yeah. And if you get days like this with the sunshine, it's glorious.
Yeah. Well, there must be on the weather map, there must be just a big stripe of gloriousness. Because if you're in London and I'm here and it's blue skies everywhere, then
yeah, blue skies. So that's really interesting, because I wasn't sure where this conversation was going to go, because I didn't know. I wasn't sure if I'm talking to someone who's in publishing and an author, or someone who is more technically minded and understands the world of software development or Ruby on Rails. And strangely, you seem to have managed to find your place in both camps.
Which is why my opinions are so correct. Yeah, it's true. I straddle the divide. So I got an archaeology degree first, very useful. Everyday sins, obviously. Then I went into retail. So I did lots of big supply chain stuff for big retailers. So I knew business and I knew things at scale, and I knew office politics, and I knew all of the nonsense that goes along with that. And even at that tender age, my kind of tolerance for cognitive dissonance was waning. And I was thinking, can I do this for another 50 business years? And then I jacked that in and went to Deloitte to be a consultant. And, you know what consultancy is like. So I was very relieved when I got made.
So living the dream.
Well, I mean, it was appealing because the frustrations when I was a buyer was that I'm massively responsible for this large, important piece of money and all of these obligations, but I don't have the agency. I don't have the control over achieving those obligations. And I thought, with consultancy, you get to be like a god. You get to see the entirety of the process, and you say, if you tweak that there and you tweak that there, then you're going to be able to fix everything. So I thought maybe this is how you fix things.
I've always considered myself as some form of deity. I'm glad that you said it. Yeah, no, I'm glad it didn't come out of my mouth. Right. Yeah. Okay. So that was Deloitte.
Yeah, so that was Deloitte. Thankfully, I got made redundant and had a payout. And then because it didn't live up to that great hope.
Okay.
It turned out, and I realised that the trick of consultancy is that you ask the client in a really subtle way right at the beginning, what is the outcome that you want? And then you write all of the PowerPoint, and then you corral the data to answer the thing that they wanted to say in the first place. It's just fights amongst directors. That people want to prove a point, and they get those sorts of consultants in. Not you.
Right. Right. So it sounds like, in the same way that shared some of the challenges of retail, you spoke about that cognitive dissonance. It sounds like you're a very authentic person.
Well, I mean, I don't know that we are all up to our knees in shit, though, aren't we? I mean, we've got React in our app. Where did React come from? A company who shall not be named.
Facebook, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. They shouldn't be named, but like if they're willing to sponsor the podcast, like we're available. I'm just going to put that out there.
Absolutely.
Right. Right. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Agreed.
And our infrastructure, because we're on Heroku, so ultimately we are on another company who nobody would be very excited about working with. So there's shades of grey, isn't there? But you see, this is the reason why I'm so baffled about how being a bit about AI is an oddity, because it seems like it's not on the spectrum of grey. It's overt. It's very clear to me that it fails the cost-benefit analysis as a business leader, and then as a human. I mean, it depends which way you come at it, doesn't it? But sometimes you see posts or positions where people say, putting aside the ethics, putting aside the environmental impact for the moment, and you think, no, stop there. You don't get to finish that sentence. That should be your warning. But even if you jump over that rather insurmountable hurdle, then you get into the business risk aspect of it. And I just can't square it. I don't know. And sometimes I think, privileged position, I own the business, I can do what I want. I mean, we all have bosses, really, don't we? All of my customers are my bosses. So I can't wave my arms and have the world the way I want it. But equally, I am in a lucky position. I don't have a immediate boss to tell me to just jolly well use Claude or whatever. But I mean, how do you square that? Do you just live in cognitive dissonance land and just try to hold your nose? Or
so to be completely transparent, internally at thoughtbot, as a software consultancy, it's challenging at the moment. We're having internal discussions we're challenging each other. There's some people who are using it, and there's some people who are not using it.
Yeah.
And the latest thing we've done is we've got an AI ethics task force where we've got people coming together to look into, are there ways of potentially using it? Are there certain maybe open source models that kind of maybe handle these environmental concerns or other concerns that people are talking about? But the outcome of that AI ethics task force might be no. And it might be that there are just people are not willing to use it. But in the coding, you'll be aware, in the software industry, it's been horrendous. It's been like constant hype. And I think I sit, again, being honest, like I appreciate the environmental and the ethics concern. I think where I sit is more on the societal concern of what do we look like as a society when this is embedded into us.
Yeah.
Which is what you can hear on, like, that was more of my stance on the opinionated thoughtbotter. But from a business perspective, I struggle to see the productivity gains. I struggle. I don't understand it.
I mean, think of the mental effort required to attend one of your AI ethics meetings and think, well, you could just sit at your desk and do some code. I mean, that immediate productivity loss, just navel gazing about this stuff.
Right, but not even that. I feel you're right. First, you're correct. Yeah, that is one point where there's time wasted, but also, and I don't know. Maybe you're hearing something from authors as well in a similar vein. Is when I sit down to write code, I write using certain principles and methodologies. We use test-driven development. We deliver ship in very, very small, what we call vertical slices, but all that means is just, small features at a time, very small bits of functionality.
Yeah.
And because we're experts at our tools, we're really quick already. We're just really quick, and the AI slows me down.
Yeah. I mean, that is the thing, isn't it? That there are already better, cheaper, more resilient, more tested, less problematic ways to achieve everything that AI suggests it might want to achieve. And then you've got all of the overtly negative stuff on top. Yeah.
Yeah. And also what you mentioned, I think you mentioned as well before, is I think you spoke about this, is like there's a level of like risk which I don't have an appetite for. So I can't build something for someone else and put it into their production server unless I'm confident that it works. Now, I can't be 100% confident. Sometimes I'm, let's say, in the 99, 98.5, whatever number you want to put on it. But to think that I could write something using AI and just deliver it without understanding what it does or how it fits into the bigger picture is negligent. It's not appropriate. I can't enter into a business contract with you and operate on those levels. So the argument is, okay, but let AI do it and then you just review it. But that's not quicker. It's not quicker for me. So all you're doing is you're shifting the effort. Either I put in the effort up front to do it myself, or I put in the effort afterwards to review. So I struggle with this. I've called it in my head that the productivity fallacy is the way I think about it.
Yeah. It's funny. You asked earlier, why am I? What am I? Who am I? What? Because I am of the world of publishing, but I'm also a full-time Rails developer. And it came about because I needed a system for a business. So there's your sort of happy eating your dog food element to all of this. But the way that I learned programming was with Michael Hartle's Ruby on Rails tutorial in one hand, a toddler in the other hand, and then, hammering away at code. The code I wrote for the first 3 years was diabolically bad. It was technical debt made large. I was a technical debt generator. And then I spent the next 10 years getting better and removing that technical debt. It has baked into my bones the knowledge that generating code is not the aim of the exercise. Generating resilient, maintainable, thoughtful features is the aim of the exercise. So I'm with you. I don't want more code quicker. Jesus, I've done that. Don't need that again in my life. I need viable, maintainable, boring, clear, simple, straightforward code that I can understand. And when a new customer requirement comes in, I can change it because we wrote it and we know about it and it's tested appropriately. Yeah. Yeah.
But message to the production team to please clip that, because I think you highlighted in like a sentence, get that all over socials, how I feel like on a day-to-day basis, really. It seems like we're regressing, like we're going backwards, because for a long time the industry's understood that, lines of code is not a good measurement of productivity.
Absolutely.
But now it feels like we're moving back in that direction, because you have at least some of we don't do this at thoughtbot, but some of the bigger tech giants, and I have a friend who called me the other day to say that they're starting to do this now, where they're measuring productivity in terms of lines of code or tokens used or PRs opened. And this is going backwards. Like you said, every extra line of code is another line of code to maintain. It's another point of failure. So you've got the way that you write code wanting to be simple, resilient to change, but from a consultancy perspective, it's the effort that it takes to write code that makes you question what is the right feature that's really valuable and needed to build. Yeah. And we're seeing that in software. Everyone is just throwing brand new features that are frustrating the users. No one wants to use AI in their in a fish dating app. It's not of interest. So I think it's impacting at both sides.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting as well that we have this. Well, certainly, I run 3 businesses that heavily rely on copyright law, and I would feel it would be very, very odd for me to unquestioningly use a product that has been proved to flout the law that is the basis for my companies. I can't, again, cognitive dissonance. I can't make sense of that. And I can't, because take the idea that this might be a blip, and then something like the Anthropic class action, which Snowbooks is a party to, because Anthropic nicked our content. Imagine that this is all a blip, and then more court cases come about. Think of the risk to me as a small business owner of having to defend the use of stolen code to build my product and sell it for money. That's not a good look. That doesn't sound nice. And I get this overriding feeling as well that a lot of the vocabulary that comes up, that bubbles up in my own mind and in conversation when we're talking about this stuff, some very romantic sounding crimes come up, like piracy. I mean, piracy always has a bit of a glamour about it, but not when you're nicking the content from the industry that I love with all my heart. Then there's this idea of like fencing stolen goods. So Anthropic took the content from our company. We pay them for a license to use software that it's based on, and then they want money for it. I mean, that doesn't sound right.
It's mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing how this has been seen as acceptable. So they train their models on our code, and then they charge us to use our code. It's mind-blowing. Yeah.
I mean, what about like that? I mean, that's a protection racket, right? And I feel like this is really strongly felt in education, which, my God, I mean, the thought that this stuff is polluting the minds of the next generation takes it from like a sort of a spectacle to a horror show, doesn't it? So, these companies say to educational establishments, we'll tell you which students are cheating with that, sort of AI assessment software if you give us money. And then they turn to the students and say, we will summarize vast tracts of uninteresting text if you give us money. And it's like they're playing off both sides, and it's a racket.
But then what do you think? So this, like you started off and you said, it's strange that possibly you're on this podcast, and possibly this podcast will do well because we hold opinions that seem to be going against the tide. What is driving, I guess, the mainstream opinion and the mainstream hype? Why are people just going after this? Do you have any thoughts on why that could be?
I think people need to keep their jobs, and if their boss tells them to do something, they're going to do it. Might be one, but then there'll be some people eye rolling saying, well, no, I like it. I like my AI. Thank you very much. And so for those people, maybe no, I'm not going to suggest that they need AI in order to do a better job. That might be rude.
But is that rude? I mean, if they're saying that they like it and it helps them and it's made them way more productive, maybe they do need it.
I mean, after programming for 15, 20 years or whatever, I am no longer excited by the shiny new exciting framework that's coming out. I don't crave the next thing. I want the framework that has existed for a long time, that is on version much more than 5, that is safe. So maybe there are some people earlier in their journeys who still find the shiny stuff exciting. I mean, I've certainly felt that in the past. As you're developing magic fingers, you're thrilled, you're high. So there might be sort of just general enthusiasm. But I wonder if it's an education thing. I wonder if we, the skeptics, are doing enough to share some of the realities of this stuff. I mean, I saw an article the other day about the onus, the load on primarily global south workers who are paid a pittance to moderate harrowing content.
I've seen those. Yeah.
I mean, there are plenty of these sort of stop moments, aren't there? Plenty of these kind of, gosh, I didn't know that. I will have to reassess this whole thing. But maybe people are, if you are working, if you're in that kind of life phase or situation where you just have to keep your job, the mind manages to compartmentalize. This isn't my fault. I can't do anything about this. I'm not responsible for fixing the planet's environmental situation. These things are all true, but I just feel that because there are alternatives, because somebody did an app the other day, and there was nothing in it. It was all AI Claude something generated.
Yeah.
There was nothing in it that you couldn't have done with a vanilla Rails app and regex. I mean, there are boring old technologies that don't cost anything much that can be repurposed, relooked at. That is what I would urge. I would always look at the choices, because choice and agency make us feel better, no matter who we are, no matter what our position. If we feel we're in control, then we can move our lives in the direction that we want to move. And so considering all of the options, I feel like is a universally delightful position to find yourself in. And so if you can think, shall I spend 3 days carefully reprompting this magical plagiarism black box to do something, or shall I use some of the technologies I also know exist? That may be an option.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I've recently been hired unofficially by my brother to be the CTO of his new app that he wants to build, because ChatGPT has told him it will be a good idea. I received no money and no contracts as of yet, but I thought, do you know what? I'm going to try and help him out, to try and give him some quick prototype that he can fail fast. Like, you want to go down this route? Let's do it. So I told Claude, I tried to do it with Claude to get it like building a prototype, and just the code. I couldn't justify it. The code was atrocious. Now, to someone with less experience. It works. It does what you need it to do. But the way I understand code is I understood that this is going to lead to massive problems. The foundation, the way it's building this application, the foundation is it won't be usable. The cost of change will become higher eventually than the cost of a rebuild, which is a bad place to be in. So it's like, it didn't even like people who tell me like, yeah, it's really good for prototypes and stuff. In that scenario, I struggled with it. I didn't get very far.
So I wrote a prototype like within our existing massive app. I did a prototype the other day, and I was struck yet again by how it's the journey, not the end result, that is the important bit. Because throughout spiking out that prototype, I learned everything. I learned all of the dead ends that I'm not going to go down. I got a sense for where the funnies would be. I discovered the future load on what it would take to write this thing properly. So then I could scope it appropriately and feed back to the customers and say, we're able to do this in this sort of time frame. However, we've now established that such and such a thing is just not cost effective. But how do you do that if you've just prompted it? You're denied that insight. So the whole point of prototyping is, yes, get something up quick. Yes, get it to fail fast. But then know what to do next.
Yeah.
Get yourself into much more of a pickle prototyping with AI than prototyping with a human brain behind it.
So I wonder as well, like, does it go deeper than just, so, I guess what we spoke about is like, let's say fear of missing out or fear of losing their jobs. Or for some people, it's chasing like the next shiny new thing. Definitely for the creators of these models, it's monetary gains and their investors as well. But I wonder if like it goes a little bit deeper for human beings, because you do get like a dopamine hit. So every time you can prompt something and it does something quickly, you do get that dopamine hit, and it fulfills that like almost animalistic impulsivity that we have. Because very often work is hard, effort is hard, and I think I speak for myself. To be fair, I don't know how other humans are, but like I seem to be innately programmed to always follow the path of least resistance. That just seems to be the way I'm built.
Yeah.
And so this, it kind of feeds into that. And sometimes I feel like, I don't know if you remember if you've ever been to, I don't know, a casino or one of these betting shops where you have the fruit machines, and you put a coin and you pull down the lever and you spin it, and it's very little effort with a high level of dopamine. And so you just keep kind of prompting and prompting and prompting. And it's really unhealthy. It's like pulling us, it's to our chemical makeup in our brains. There's no science employed here, by the way. I wonder if it's getting us at kind of that dopamine level.
That's really interesting. I mean, coming from publishing and loving it as I do, publishing is gambling. So every year, hundreds of thousands of books are published. None of them are guaranteed to sell. It's a complete accident oftentimes in trade publishing to know what's going to work and what doesn't. It's all down to serendipity. And so you're constantly pulling the one-armed bandit lever thing. You're guessing, and the thrill is real, because you do 10 books and they all fail, and then you do the next one and all of your cards come in, and it's utterly thrilling. So I'm no stranger to that dopamine hit. I do not feel that with AI. I feel sickened at the scam that's being pulled in front of me. I see straight through it. It's sycophantic. It's obsequious. It's psychopathic. Not to anthropomorphize too much. But I mean, I've had experience with sociopathic types, and all of the red flags are there. You're like, you're being spoken to in a way that makes you dependent. And then, and isn't that interesting with the pricing at the moment? That, we're seeing that prices of access to these licenses is heavily subsidized at the moment, and the scales are starting to fall from our eyes as these, like with the GitHub announcement a couple of weeks ago, where they were saying, oh, we're pulling this feature and we're jacking the price up here, and that's just going to get worse.
I think so. So I guess then, and I appreciate these conversations about AI. But what also I mentioned in the intro kind of stood out is almost like a more of a public anti-AI stance. And I'm interested, as a business, have people noticed that? What's been the feedback? Do you get positive feedback, negative feedback? Because I think there's a lot of businesses out there who are scared, even if they may feel this way, to come up publicly and say, we're a business that doesn't use generative AI.
Well, like I say, I think it is the risk-averse position to take. I think I've spent the last week, right, doing my annual Cyber Essentials renewal, which I really love, actually, which is weird because it's a lot of spreadsheets. But it's a framework. It's backed by the UK government, and it's a framework for checking that you're doing kind of normal things in terms of privacy and data security. You can layer on some questions about the GDPR because that's being sort of upgraded in June 26. And so there's just quite a few, sensible questions like, what are your processes? Have you got your firewall turned on? What's your disaster recovery program? And as I was going through it, I was thinking, I'm so glad that I have made sure that our code is written by humans and that we have not licensed problematic libraries, and that we have retained the intellectual property in our business to make us resilient going forward. And we haven't encumbered ourselves with technical debt that we're going to have to pay down over the next 10 years. I was so glad to be able to answer honestly for these questions. This is our process. It's been thought through. This is our risk assessment. It contains nothing. You see, I'm the sort of risk-averse person. When GDPR came out, I deleted our MailChimp mailing list because I just thought, well, I've had this for like 15 years. I can't remember when consent was granted. I'm just going to delete it. So that's I am a risk-averse business manager. I don't have, we don't do finance in that way. We spend from our cash. When we have got the money in the bank, we spend it. So as a small business owner who is very, very close to the operating, I am the admin of the business. I'm massively risk averse, and my position is to maintain risk averse processes, and that is one of the reasons why I don't want this stuff anywhere near my code base or my people. Because I want to be viable, and I want to be good, and I want people to trust us, and I want people to know what they're buying, and I want to be able to respond to their requirements as we go forward. It's not weird. It's not weird.
I know. I love the way you portray that, because you're saying that this stance is what actually is the most positive thing, because it gives you like the stability, the reliability, the authenticity. And I wonder if we're going to see more and more businesses in the same way we see kind of fair trade businesses, where people have like an emblem which says, an icon, right? We're fair trade. Yeah. We're going to see people who say we don't use AI, and actually people are going to gravitate towards those businesses. They want that individuality.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. So I think at the moment, most people are hedging their bets, saying, I might want to do that, but actually this thing is going to take over. This is the next thing. I need to be a part of it. And I think that's a lot of fear, probably. It's fear that's propelling people to do that, to say, no, we're on this bandwagon. Look at us. We're doing all this AI content. But it's really interesting that I think there'll be more businesses who come out as saying, we don't use AI. This is who we are. And I think people will gravitate towards that.
Yeah. I mean, I have to say, I've adopted this as a personal stance, again, because I just can't can't do the thing in my head of knowing one thing and saying another thing. It's life's too short for that sort of. But as a business, I've not sort of put anything on the company website to say no to AI, because there may be some useful things that come out of it. I'm very much focused on the generative AI. You nicked our stuff, now you're trying to sell it back to us. End of things. But
Right.
like you said with your ethics committee, if somebody puts something on an Arduino or a Mac Mini, and you only ever train the thing on content that you definitely own and you're absolutely certain in that, if you use it as just some sort of big indexing box, and you do it efficiently, or if people stop having to rely on enormous data centers rather than, there's potential. So I'm not going to say AI broad brush stroke, no machine learning, no nothing, because that's not right. What I do rail against is the current state of things, the current offerings from the current companies with the current burden of externalities on the environment, the current place from which the content has been pilfered.
Right.
I'm not building on that. Absolutely not. But I'm also not using this as a point of marketing. I think that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it would land well. I think that a lot of our customers are exploring the ideas here. I think for the last 10, 15, 20 years, I have banged the drum of technical literacy within publishing, because publishing tends to be a bit of it's sort of a middleman in the supply chain. It doesn't write the books, it doesn't print the books, it doesn't sell the books, that's often outsourced. It doesn't make the ebooks or the audiobooks, that's outsourced. So it's publishing has a bit of a tendency to look for other tools. They have not responded well to my urges to learn to code. Some people have, obviously, but there hasn't been a big shift because of my own,
Right.
shouting about it. And so I feel like I want to make sure that any insights I have, by virtue of knowing publishing in my bones and writing code all day long for 2 decades, I want to make sure that I pass on the insights from that unique position as it stands at the moment, so that people, as they're feeling their way, have that voice, have that maybe soul voice that says, these are considerations in the round. Coming back to, the dream from consultancy, have this overarching view of everything and be able to say, problem, benefit. Oh dear, they don't balance out.
Yeah, I think having the humility to say, like, I don't like AI in its current form, but I understand the technology and it could have a place, I think is a nice leveler to this conversation, because people are going to listen and be like, oh, they just hate AI and that's all this. And I don't think that's true for myself either. I do use it in its current form in some ways. I use it like a tool, and I use it in ways that I find are helpful for me. I don't think I'm using it in the way that most people are, or I don't have the same hype or same benefit that most people seem to be able to get from it. But I think, like we're looking into in thoughtbot, there's potentially, this is what I really want: the dust to settle. I want the hype train to slow down, let the dust settle, and let's see where it does end up. And then are there ways, like you're speaking about, can you have a model which is just trained on your data, which is useful for you, instead of, kind of these big tech companies which have stolen all the data. We're running out of time.
Sure.
But I made a note here, and it says, come back to the side project, make our book, because I've got 4 beautiful children and who love their books. My house is littered with children's books, and as they're getting older now, kind of the start your reading journey and bigger books. Shout out to my mum, who also authored a book. Hi, Mum. So it's the actual, forget the code side, but the book side kind of speaks to me a lot as well. So can you tell me more about Make Our Book?
Oh, thank you. Yes, I'm going to go straight into the technical side, aren't I? But I shouldn't. It's a Rails app. It uses LaTeX to typeset children's writing. There's an interface where teachers usually, or group leaders, or parents sometimes, type in their children's work, also upload scans of their pictures, and you end up with an exquisite poetry book with drop caps and beautiful typography and an index and a kind of snapshot in time of where the children are. So we edit for sensible things, but we don't edit out the funnies of spellings and turns of phrase. And to be honest, I don't do any marketing on it because it's a side project, but I've just had a customer come back for their 8th year in a row. So there were children who started in reception who are now, aged out of the system, year 6 and beyond, who have got an annual record of their development and what they were thinking. And I just feel like I wrote it because I was on the PTA at my son's school and I hated it because I can't bear school gate chat. And so it was something I could do that wasn't baking or talking to people. So it's a real sort of contribution to the sort of enrichment activities of a school. But as the curriculum in school gets more and more peculiar, I feel it's a leavener to some of the sort of, exams, facts. It's an outlet for creativity. So it ticks a lot of boxes, I feel. And I also really like it because it's remarkable how you have 100% happy customers. And I think this is the thing I've been so delighted about through all of the things I've done, that at Constance, we have happy customers. And when I get these videos of unboxings from the children at schools and I see these faces, and honest to God, I cry every single time because it's moments in children's lives that will resonate throughout, potentially, because they know that they belong to the world of books. They know that their voice is as important as the books on the bookshelf that they buy from the bookshops or get out of the library. And I just feel like, God, this is impact. And I did it with a Rails app, hosted on the cheap option on Heroku, with a background runner to generate the PDFs. It's super traditional programming, but the thought has gone into the bit that matters, which is what value are you giving to your customers? And when your customers are little kids and you're giving them delight about the world of books, then I just feel like, well, good. I'm glad.
That's lovely and quite heartwarming. And it's something which I'll check out. It's nice that you say you don't take out the funnies. Do you? I still get laughed at for this. When I was little, we used to have like a small shopping list on the fridge in our kitchen. For those who remember shopping lists, there wasn't an app. We didn't order online. And my mum said to me, "We're out of lychees. So can you write lychee? You know the fruit."
I do. I'm wondering.
You know the fruit. Oh, okay. So I went into the shopping list and I picked up my trusted pen. And on the thing, I wrote LIGHTCHEESE. Light cheese. And to this day, whenever we need to get light cheese, I still get taken apart for that, but it's brilliant. And like, it's really, So look, for the production team, don't click that because it's not funny and it won't garner views and it's not the sort of thing I'm looking to spread.
Things. It's the moments in life that this whole thing. This is the point of things.
So, Emma, thank you so much for joining me today. I really, really enjoyed our conversation and it was great to get a chance to speak to you properly. If people listen to this conversation they like your opinions, they're interested in your products, what's the best way they can get hold of you?
Sure thing. Go to www.consonance.app and put your email into the field on the homepage and it'll get to me.
Amazing. So you can find notes and a complete transcript for this episode at giantrobots.fm. If you have questions or comments, you can email us at hosts@giantrobots.fm. Please don't email me in pictures of light cheese. I'm not interested. It's not funny. This podcast is brought to you by thoughtbot. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next time.